Hello and welcome back to the Heartbeat of Money. I'm Jon P. Moffitt, and today I'd like to introduce Ramsey Bergeron, leadership growth strategist and resilient mindset developer facilitator. He's based in Scottsdale, Arizona, amazingly recovering from 2 back surgeries and completed 8 Ironman races. He helps leaders turn pressure into clarity and action. He's got a keynote speech, Your Power is in Your Perspective, and he's the creator of the VIBRATE assessment. He mentors in industries of utilities, healthcare, real estate, public services, and even the U.S. Army. Today's theme, mindset breakthroughs, emotional shifts in entrepreneurship, and real tools leaders can use right away. I want you to lean in because this conversation is about moving from burnout to empowerment. And don't forget, get the link below, bergeronwellbeing.com below. Ramsey, so good to have you on the show today. Your story, man, it's so incredible. 2 back surgeries, then 8 Ironman races. How did that journey shape the way you approach resilience and mindset today?
Well, John, I appreciate you having me on. Thank you so much. And the story wasn't just built in a day. Whenever I had my first back surgery, I wasn't thinking, man, I can't wait to use this one day whenever I do 8 Ironman. My first back surgery, I was 19 years old. I ruptured it. I played football in high school and just had a bad back. I was lifting in the gym, form wasn't great. And then 3 ruptured discs in my back at 19, second back surgery at 26 years old to repair those 3 same ruptured discs. 19 years old, I couldn't walk, I couldn't stand up. And I didn't know what I didn't know. We're dealt the cards that were dealt, and how do we choose to respond to that? So did my physical therapy and did what I could to take control of my life. The Ironmans came later, and that was a different trajectory that I didn't even realize I was going to be on at the time.
Yeah. So the Ironmans, so 8 of them, what possessed you to just keep going? I mean, that is resilience in some method. Were you trying to beat an actual goal or what made you keep going with those?
Well, what's so funny, I got into triathlon originally out of spite. And I don't share that with a lot of people,
Yeah.
but I was dating somebody who's a triathlete and they thought they were just the best thing ever. And then I looked at what a sprint triathlon was and I'm like, it was like a 500-meter swim, 10-mile bike ride, and then a 1-mile run. I'm like, I can do that. That's not that bad. Let's
Yeah.
give it a shot. So I did my first sprint, and then it just felt so energizing to cross that finish line, such a sense of accomplishment. I said, well, what's the next distance? And so I did the next distance and the next distance. And I think my first Ironman was in 2000. Sorry, my first triathlon was in 2005. 5 years later, I do my first Ironman.
Yeah.
And crossing that finish line, it felt so incredible. This is what I think a lot of entrepreneurs might be able to relate to, or people in general. We set a goal and then we feel incredible once we've hit that goal, but every feeling that we've ever had fades.
Right.
And so that sense of accomplishment that you have when you cross that finish line or you open your business or you get married, whatever that thing may be, that feeling begins to fade.
Mm-hmm.
And so that, what do you anchor to then? So some time would pass. I would start to feel empty again. Like, well, all right, let's do another Ironman. I wanted to feel that feeling again. So part of it was wanting that sense of fulfillment of having accomplished something, but also I recognize now how much of that was also running from things that I probably should have addressed and felt.
Right.
Because when you're pouring all of your life into one area, and some people do that with work, some people do that in relationships, some people do that with their finances, or for me, it was my athletics. We tend to neglect other areas of our life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what helped me begin to learn to pivot to have more balance in my life, was recognizing something's just out of alignment here. I'm chasing this thing, but it never lasts. So going back to the drawing board and asking myself, what is my intention? Why am I doing these Ironman triathlons? And what can I do to find more of a sense of satisfaction every day instead of only when I'm crossing?
Right. So your power is in your perspective, right? And so at the end of the day, what does that mean in practice for leaderships and leaders out there?
It means that it's your choice if you want to be the victim of the situation that you're in. There's always going to be situations that happen outside of our control. As a matter of fact, everything other than how you respond is outside of your control. Mm-hmm. And it's what's the story you're telling yourself around that. So your power and your perspective, that's really just letting people know that it's up to you to determine, how do you want this to impact you? I wrote a book about a time when I was in the wedding industry of a bride who went to cut her wedding cake, and the venue didn't lock the legs of the table out, and the cake falls all over the floor. And that bride actually starts laughing, and then everyone starts laughing. And she could have had different responses to that cake falling on the floor. It's not change that makes us suffer. It's wanting things to be the same or wanting things to be the way that we wanted them. That's all suffering is.
Yeah.
So your powers and your perspective means you're able to slow down and say, all right, well, this happened. What do I want to do now? How do I want to view this and use it to move forward?
I love the book. I was able to read a little bit of it, after we met. And by the way, when we met, man, you gave me such insight. You were telling me about your assessment that you have, and it's VIBRATE, if I remember right, is the assessment. And I came back and I was like, gosh, an assessment, that's so good for clients. So I went and I call it the double EI, it's EEI, which is the Entrepreneurial's Emotional Index. And it really helps entrepreneurs understand where they are emotionally. So when they're making decisions, they're making them from the right perspective. And so,
Yeah.
I really appreciated our talk the other day that we had, and it really inspired me to even create my own assessment and dive in. So thank you for that. So one of the things that I kind of pulled out of there, and you have just F it and Timeout. I want to get a little perspective on that. Tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. So just F it is a reframing methodology that I developed to help people reframe situations. And when you think just F it, obviously, a certain F comes to mind, but there's actually 4 different Fs that help you reframe a situation that you're going through. The first 2 Fs are facts and feelings. So helping you understand what are the objective facts of the situation. Facts don't create emotion. Emotions come from a judgment of a fact. So what are the facts and how do I feel about it? And be honest, the point of it's not to gaslight yourself and say, all right, no, don't be stressed, don't be worried. If you're stressed and worried, be honest with yourself. This is how I'm feeling about it. I think one of the main reasons I have clients do this is a lot of times we'll take feelings and make them facts. And being able to do this helps us realize that we can feel however, how we feel is accurate and honest, but that feeling won't last forever. Just like I'm talking about that feeling of crossing that finish line, it's going to fade.
Right.
The third F is flip it. Flip the feeling. Eventually, I'm going to be okay with whatever's going on. I'm going to make peace with it. What would I do different if I was at peace with it right now?
Right.
So whatever these feelings are, generally that's causing me to have discomfort inside where I'm not accepting the situation. So if I'm frustrated or shut down about a situation, what usually is happening, John, is in my head, I'm saying this shouldn't be this way. I don't like this. I wish it was different. And I'm stuck in the past when I'm doing that. I'm not really working through it. I'm talking about what I don't like about reality.
Yeah.
So by flipping it, I'm saying, all right, if I was okay with it, what would I do different? Well, I'd probably start looking for solutions. So looking for what can I learn from the situation. And so it creates enough space between you and the story. It's not going to magically make you not feel that way, but you're going to recognize that you have choices in how you choose to move in your behavior moving forward. The fourth F is future. What would 70-year-old Ramsey, looking back, tell me to do in this situation? And, in most scenarios, it would probably be, hey, this is all right. You're going to survive this. You survive other things. What can you learn from this? Like, how is this going to help you grow? So by using those 4 Fs, you're able to take a situation, separate out, look at it objectively, understand how you feel and what you would do different if you felt differently, and then gain some distance and perspective by asking what your future self would do in that scenario.
Yeah. I love that. So you've worked in all kinds of industries, healthcare, real estate, even the U.S. Army. You probably see some commonalities in the leadership when you're kind of working with these different industries. Can you hit on something that might touch all the listeners that you kind of see as this same kind of thing that's happening throughout different industries, but from leaders and what they're trying to accomplish?
Great question. Across the board, I think leaders spend too much time focusing on the outcome and not the process. They're so focused on the objectives, they're not being present with how they're achieving those objectives. It's like, do you want to have a successful company or do you want to learn how to build a successful company? Do you want your team to admire you, or do you want to learn how to have the connection with your team to be able to have them trust you, to be able to earn that admiration?
Yeah.
That's the first thing, is feeling that pressure of outcome focus. Another thing I think is common, 75% of job loss that occurs is due to emotional intelligence components. The inability to handle interpersonal conflict, the inability to handle stress in times of challenge, and leadership being unable to manage change effectively for the team. So being able to recognize you're not a leader, they're not employees, you're all people.
Right.
And embrace your humanity, you're able to understand and appreciate how you feel and your employees. We're not just looking at them as widgets. We're all people at the end of the day.
Right.
The third thing, I think, which kind of Timeout hits on, is time management. We glorify busy and don't appreciate the task of doing the job. And so helping people work with time management and make the most of being present with what they're doing.
It reminds me as you're talking about this, and I know we can talk about business, but I kind of want to flip it to sports a little bit. So I remember I hated conditioning. Like when I played football and they lined us up and they're like, it's time to condition. I absolutely hated it until one day I started to say, make the most out of what you're doing right now and focus in this one thing. It translates to later on the field, right? But emotionally, when they line you up and they're going to blow the whistle and you got to get going, you're like, man, I don't want to run this. I just did a whole practice and now you want me to run, and they get on you. And then as soon as I had that flip of like, this is my time to make the best of myself. It feels like that when you're talking about, okay, we have this goal of we're going to implement this new software in a business, and there's 10 steps to get there. And you have to really focus and find joy in each one of the steps along the way, back to what you're talking about with the people. Oh man, that is so good. So timeout, what is timeout? Like, explain that a little more to me. I want to understand that.
Sure. It's an acronym, and I know a lot of companies are acronymed out, and especially when I was working with the Army, they're like, we have more acronyms than we know what to do with.
Right.
But I think it's a helpful way to remember things. So it spells out TIMEOUT. The first T is for time blocking. So I pretty much run my day in 30-minute time blocks. I have my little Pomodoro timer here. And
that's cool.
What I'll do is I'll set it for 25 minutes. So whatever number's on top, I set it down like that, and it starts counting down from 25.
Yeah.
So for 25 minutes, I have one task that I'm focused on. It's not to get that task done. It's just to dedicate that time, no distractions. I'm focused on that task. And that's the T, time block. Okay. And I recommend doing it for a week, just kind of looking at it like, all right, so how many blocks do I need to accomplish what? And to start that, I have my clients write out, what are all the things that you need to do and how much time do you need to take to do it?
Yeah.
I is insulate. So if you're replying to emails all the time, or you're on Teams or Slack and you're constantly being distracted, you're not able to focus. So insulate. Put your email on auto reply. Hey, I only reply to emails between this time and this time, or put your Slack on do not disturb, whatever it is, to just protect your time.
Yeah.
M is mindful. I'm not going to do several tasks at once. I'm going to do one. E is empower. Empower your team, because a lot of times with especially new managers, they end up doing the job of their team.
Yeah.
They want to be in the trenches and doing the work. And when they're doing that, they're not doing their job.
Yeah.
So you empower your team. Hey, make the best decision you can. Whenever we meet next, we'll talk about what did you learn from it. O is optimize. So go back, look at the end of a week. Okay, I needed an extra block here. I needed to move things around, so breaking it down more. U is unplug. So the reason I have it set for 25 minutes is then I set it on 5, and that time's for me. So 5 minutes of every 30 minutes, I'll do anything from just play with my dog for a minute, grab a glass of water, do some planks, return some texts or emails. But because otherwise we think we're productive if I just sit down and work for 8 hours straight, but that's not true. Your brain can't focus that much. So by unplugging, you're actually more focused for those 25 minutes, and you get so much more done. And the last T is track. Go back and look, see what you're actually able to accomplish using this method. And you're going to be surprised if you try it for a week or two, just really where you're at and see where you can make some changes and how it's going to affect your life.
That's awesome. That's awesome. How can business owners or entrepreneurs kind of use in the middle of a stressful day? Do you have some like techniques when they're like just in the middle of a stressful day, everything's going kind of crazy? Do you have any type of like technique that you're like, okay, whether it's an acronym or whatever, here's a good way to kind of pull yourself back in the middle of a day and get back to where you're at a base?
Yeah, it's a great question, John. I actually do half-day workshops on EQ in the workplace or stress management in the workplace.
Yeah.
And there's several different ways that we do that. And it starts with understanding. I have another acronym called CALM, C-A-L-M, helping people. The C is for center, so just take some deep breaths, gain center. Center yourself. A, awareness. Okay, what are the facts? What are the feelings? L, learn. What can I learn? What can I learn from this situation?
Mm-hmm.
And then M is mantra. Creating a mantra, usually you're flipping a negative into a positive where I am calm, I am peace, I can handle this, whatever it is. But just using this little technique is just a way to slow down, take a breath, focus on what you can learn, and then just give yourself those words of affirmation you need.
Man, that is some really great advice. Okay, so for the listeners who are entrepreneurs, executives, even team leaders, what's one shift they could make today that would help them show up with more energy and clarity tomorrow?
Journal.
Journal.
And I promise you, I'm working with an organization right now because it's about awareness. So much of our problems originate because we're on autopilot. We're just consciously reacting to the situations happening around us, and we're not responding.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever done something, John, and then you'll have to apologize later, like, hey, I apologize for how I acted. That's not a representation of who I am. I mean, I'm sure as a married man.
Oh, well, yeah, half my life, I think I've been, having to apologize for my outbursts, but
Yeah, so journal, and I have intentional journals that I've designed based on the company's priorities and objectives. So every morning, just some of them is writing down my like 3 goals and 3 things I'm grateful for in the morning. And at the end of the day, what 3 things did I reframe? It's like, what were my wins? When did I look at something negatively and then I was able to find a lesson in it? And then when was I negative today? Those are just a couple of the things. The journal's a little bit more intensive than that. Some
yeah.
checklist stuff. I'm just giving you a high level view. And what that does is it helps you begin to create awareness and reflect, where was I not being my best self today? Because if we don't do that, it might be weeks later or sometimes years later, like, oh my gosh, in that situation, I was such a jerk to that person, or that wasn't in a way, I didn't behave in a way that was in alignment with my values.
Yeah.
So when you create that awareness in the morning, what do I want to accomplish today and what am I grateful for? And then winding your day down, all right, where did I win? What could I have done different? And what will I do better tomorrow? Now I'm living with intention. I'm creating structure. Most entrepreneurs have systems for their operations, but they don't have systems for their mindset.
Well, I can tell you, most entrepreneurs, you wake up and the first thing you're thinking about is, can I look at my inbox? Did I get a sale today? What are my problems? They're not like purposely waking up and really understanding where they are emotionally in their day. I think that journal is awesome. I love that. That's really great.
Well, and especially the morning starts with the night before. So
Okay.
the night before, I'm writing down what my 3 priorities are for the next day.
Okay.
I'm not waking up in a state of panic, worried I'm forgetting something.
I love that.
So you up the night before. Tomorrow, this is what I want to focus on. And then in the morning, you double check that alignment and you already have that. And then you write down 3 things you're grateful for, because what you see is what you see what you look for.
Right.
Like when you get a new car, you start seeing that car everywhere. If I start writing things down I'm grateful for, I'm going to start seeing things I'm grateful for all the time. That really makes a difference.
So I can tell you actually practice this in your daily journeys in life. And this is like who you are. And you're not just up there teaching something, but you actually live it. I've actually seen you through so many different evolutions of your life, from DJing, amazing, from, being a trainer, from all the things you've done. And so when did this kind of formulate? When did this kind of all come together and click for you?
Great question. I think it may sound cheesy. I was always meant to do this.
Okay.
This is a combination of every job I've had. Like when you knew me, I was a DJ working with your wife and you
Yeah.
for events for years. And that got me comfortable reading the energy in the room, knowing how to talk to groups of 500, 600 people,
Yeah.
and that things are always going to happen. We wanted to have the toasts go at 7. Well, all right, well, let's roll with the flow. Like they didn't happen at 7. Great. The audience doesn't know that. We're going to move them 30. Like, so just learning how to adapt like that. As a personal trainer, everyone knows they need to eat better and move more. Why aren't they? So
Yeah.
really helping figure out what's holding them back. There was a specific wedding that I even worked with you that impacted me. Do you remember? And we did that wedding up in Cottonwood, and you had another chef with you that I had just met. He was talking about wanting to get back in shape.
Yeah.
And I remember being there at the wedding and then watching an ambulance come through the vineyard.
Oh my gosh.
to-
That was the
catering.
first event I had ever done ever, was that event. It was out at a vineyard, right? We were at.
The vineyard up in
Yeah,
Cottonwood.
that was such a wild experience with that gentleman. He wanted to get back
Yeah.
in shape. He just came back. He was just getting back into chefing again. Yeah. Yeah, I remember that event.
And he passed away.
He did.
Just for the audience who doesn't.
It was so interesting about that particular story. It makes me kind of sad, but I said, "You aren't feeling well. Go home. I got this. Just go home. It's okay." He's like,
Yeah.
"No, I have to finish the salmon." And he was so dedicated to making this dish so amazing. And we were cooking for like 120 people.
Yeah.
And what was so crazy at that event, nobody knew what happened to him. I had at least 30 people come up and compliment me on the salmon.
Yeah.
He ended up having a heart attack and passing. A lady that night went into labor and had a baby that night. All around this same energy of this wedding where people had an amazing event. We had a
And
birth, a death,
It was a,
and
it was a Buddhist wedding.
Yeah.
So I remember it was the first time I'd ever heard any inkling of Eastern philosophy. And I remember the person that was presiding over the wedding said, like, during the ceremony, we're just going to pause for a moment and just be present, just be here.
Yeah.
And then for that to be the wedding that all of this happened, it was really a magical and to be a part of that and for you to introduce me to him, because you don't always introduce me to people you work with.
Right.
But that was probably 2018, 2019.
yeah, yeah.
And that was a very impactful moment.
Oh, wow.
And think about let's think about how this applies to entrepreneurs and people who might be listening to
Yeah.
this. Like at the end of the day, what is your job costing you, and is it worth it to you?
Right.
Like when do you slow down enough to recognize this is what's going on with me, this is how I feel, or I remember talking with him and he was a really really nice guy down to
He
earth
was
and just
so excited. Yeah, he'd
Yeah.
literally been on a couch for like 4 years, is kind of retired. And he's like, I want to go back and cook again and chef
Yeah.
again. And he literally 2 weeks before that happened, just got off his butt and came out and started doing what he loved to do again. And my dad and I always talked about, he's passed, but he's like, it's the best place to pass is doing something you love. If you think about it, if he had a heart attack on a couch, he'd have felt worthless. He was up again, moving around, doing something he loved to do, and he left. And so, yeah, it was that was a really impactful moment for me too. Especially it was my first event that I had done when we launched the business, and it was like, oh wow, all of this happened at once. But yeah, entrepreneurs, I think part of the thing I see with entrepreneurs is they're reactionary to the environment they're in. They go through 3 cycles. The first cycle is I'm super excited. I'm creating something. I've created it. Now I have to operate and manage it. And then they get to this point where they're starting to get burnout because, thing about a business is you're either growing or exiting or you're dying. And so you have to look at your business model and say, how do I grow? And do I have the energy to grow? Do I know how to grow? And I think it comes down to mindset, spirit, and emotion. That's what this podcast is all about. And you're hitting on all of it, which I really, really love.
And growth isn't always linear, right? And so when they're like, well, I'm like, you're going to have months that are slower. I remember when I first started this business, whenever I pivoted to this, and I pivoted to this because my best friend passed away in 2020, and he was 42 years old. And I'm thinking, like, what in the hell am I doing with my life? What am I waiting for? I
Right.
want to help people in a more profound way. And so really going back, studying and doing the work on myself and being able to help leaders and organizations. Um, it's I remember I was doing a class on divorce. I thought I'm going to work with people going through divorce, and then I tried that for a couple of months and decided, no, this isn't for me.
Yeah.
Because but if I looked at that like a loss, like, oh, I invested all this time and energy into this and it didn't work. I learned so much from learning how do I do a funnel, how do I do a 5-day thing online. How do I market my business? How do I design my website to attract people? I learned so much from that. So as entrepreneurs, sometimes we think that just because this didn't bring in money, that it's a loss. What did you learn from that situation? And can I continue? Like, I know you're going to look at your churn rate, but are you able to still put to eat? And can you use this for something in the future? I think it's a matter of how you're framing the appear. How are you framing the things that look like setbacks that might not be? They might be learning lessons.
Well, and I think that, every entrepreneur that is a serial entrepreneur understands that it's building blocks, right? We're building
Yeah.
every year, every decade, however long we're in it, we're building one thing after another. We're learning a new skill, and we're going on. And I just think it really comes down to the emotion. I love the journal, by the way. I think that is so great. So tell me a little bit more. So the night before, okay, you're like, is this like right before you go to bed? Is this like at the end of your day? Like, when do you tell people, hey, listen, set up your next day, get in the mindset to set up your next day? Do you do it before you kind of leave work for the day, or is it something like at the very end of your day, you've done everything, it's right before you go to bed?
It's one of those, I try not to micromanage it too much with people. I like to do it for me right before I go to bed.
Okay.
Well, reframe that. I like to do it about an hour before I go to bed because then I
Okay.
have a wind down routine.
Gotcha.
So I think, all right, what do I want? Because I don't want to get my mind racing right before
Right.
bed. So by writing it down, I'll generally meditate just for in the evening, maybe just 10 minutes of centering. In the morning, I do a 20-minute meditation. But at night, I'll center, which will help me get out of my own way and think about what I need to do the next day. I'll write those 3 things down. Then I plug my phone in across the room. I don't have it by the bed. And I write down an affirmation to myself that the first thing in the morning, that's what's on my nightstand.
So
And
give me
whether
an
it's
example of a couple affirmations, because I think listeners sometimes, a lot of people don't even really understand what affirmations are. And I'd like to hear just a couple affirmations that you use usually or help you in your journey.
Well, it might be, I am right where I belong.
Okay.
Everything today is going to work out.
Yeah.
There's nothing, nothing really matters other than other than the journey.
Right.
Or I'm resilient, or I'm going to close this deal today. Like today's going to be fancy. Just little things like that, because whenever you wake up, you're still in that kind of sleepy, half conscious, half unconscious place. That's when your mind is kind of open. Mm-hmm. And the last thing I want to do is pick up a box that has all of the knowledge, information in the universe and plug into things that are going to stress me out.
Right. Right.
So I want to start my day grounded with positivity.
Mm-hmm. I love it.
And then start the day.
I love it. So, to wrap this up, what are a couple pieces? Give me 2 or 3 little things that you would give as words of wisdom or advice from Ramsey to the entrepreneurs listening that can be in different stages. Maybe they're in this stage of starting the company, maybe they're operating, or maybe they're thinking about growing generational wealth and exiting. That's the listeners that we have on here. Give me something that they could walk away with today.
The first thing I would say is be where you are. So many of us beat ourselves up because we're not where we think we quote unquote should be. And then we're sprinting through the lessons I could be learning in this moment, chasing something that isn't where I'm supposed to be. You are where you are. And the sooner you can embrace that, then you can accept reality. Because if you're like, I shouldn't be here, I should be further along, then you're already not focused on, well, this is where I am. What do I want to do from here? So be present and don't ask advice from people who have no skin in the game. Everyone wants to give you, well, this is what I think you should do. Oh, well, have you ever started a company? No. Are you in my industry? No. Then why the hell, why should I listen to you? What have
Right.
you done other than being an armchair quarterback telling me how to run my business? Unless you're my target demographic, in which case I'm going to ask you for, would you like this product? But we all have friends that want to, well, if it were me, well, it's not you. It's just an opinion.
Yeah.
So really be careful with how broad of a net you're casting for advice, because then you're not even following what's true for you in your business.
I love that. I'm big on proximity. I have started so many businesses that didn't work because the people I had around me and the proximity of the advice I was getting. And I learned in a short period of time that good advice doesn't come free. And you should find those that could mentor you. You should be spending a little bit of money on them because they're worth it. And so I love that. Well, Rand,
Well, I think if you find somebody, make sure you find somebody that's asking you questions, not just telling you what to do.
right.
Because if they're asking you questions, it's getting you thinking about things you may have considered or not considered versus, well, you should do this. Like, well, what are your thoughts on this? Or have you thought about how this may affect the business? Or what do you think that's going to impact a year from now? So it's those kind of questions when you're asking people for quote unquote advice. Make sure that they're helping you figure out how you feel your business should go.
Right. And the other thing is it's like the old gym membership thing, right? You go in the gym, you sign a membership, and the first thing you do is you have 5 people come up to you and like, I can train you. And I always had a rule. If they didn't look how I wanted to look, then I wasn't going to hire them to train me. And so I feel that's the same about advice. If they haven't been there, done it, and been successful at it, you shouldn't really be asking them questions at the end of the day,
I
And
agree.
so, and sometimes it's hard to get those resources out there, but they are out there. Well, hey man, I really appreciate you being on the podcast. Is there any question you'd like to ask me before we sign off? I just, always give the people an
Well,
opportunity.
gosh, that's so open-ended. I
can
would
ask
say
me anything.
then all right, what's your biggest takeaway from our conversation today?
My biggest takeaway from this conversation is I'm going to journal and I'm going to write some affirmations. And I am really excited to read more of your book and learn more about what you're doing. But, I've been on a journey to help entrepreneurs deal with the emotions before they make decisions. And what I've taken away is that through our experiences in life, we establish who we are, and pivoting to something that feels good is a better journey than staying in something and suffering. And so
what do you say when you're saying pivoting to something that feels good? What do you mean by that?
So for example, in the middle of the day, I'm stressed out, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, time out. I got to take a minute and I have to move towards something that's feeling better. Well, if I don't assess the information, like you said, and look at the facts and deal with my emotions, it's hard to pivot. And so time out and pivot is kind of how I take that. And what I mean by pivot is pivot your emotion, pivot your thought, pivot your mindset so that it's in line with what you want as an outcome, even though the outcome you're in isn't actually where you want to be in an instant. And I've done this, and it's like the old saying that they have in the Bible, a wise man holds their tongue. Sometimes in life, the best thing you can do is just be quiet, be present, listen and feel, understand where you are emotionally, because your vibration and who you are energetically is transferring to everybody else in the room, whether you know it or not. And that's where the attraction comes. So if your energy's off and you can't take a moment, like that's what I got out of today was like, hey, in the middle of the day, take a moment, focus on what the facts are, focus on why you're feeling that way. And when I say pivot your mind, pivot your energy, and pivot your spirit towards what you want the outcome to be, because you can change the outcome of your day in an instant.
Well, so give us an example, right? Like let's hear about Jon's journey. So tell me about a time when you had to pivot your mindset because things weren't working the way you wanted them to.
Oh my gosh. Oh. Well, in the wedding business or in the catering business, it's really easy to relate to, right? So I am probably one of the only owners that does not believe in timelines. I believe in flow, right? And so when you have a leadership perspective that we don't fire food on a time, we fire food on a moment that's happening with the wedding. We don't do anything unless they are in that moment. And so shifting from timeline to shifting to what's actually happening is a huge pivot. And I learned that very early in the business because nothing ever happens on the timeline, in time, on time, ever. And so when stuff doesn't happen on time, you got 100 people coming. What, is everything gonna be okay? What's gonna happen? Oh no, is it gonna all fall apart? And you're like, timeout. Like, no, everything's still going to happen how it's going to happen. And so I scratched after my first couple events. I'm like, we don't do stuff on timeline. When they go up to the aisle, that's when we do this. When they kiss, we do this. When they, and so we started coming up with like actions within the events to create what we do opposed to actual time. So that was a pivot. Another pivot I had, and this is more of a personal pivot, is I got a call one day from my brother, and I was in the middle of something. Like, my day was going on. I was happy. He's like, oh, my God, my wife's been in an accident. My wife, can you go to the hospital? And my brother never calls me. But people seem to call me when they're in distress situations just because of my demeanor. And I had to pivot, saying that I had no idea what I was walking into, but I had to be the strength for that, walking in that room. And I remember telling myself to pivot in that emotion of don't be scared, don't be fearful, give re-encouragement, go in there with the attitude that everything's going to be okay. You're going to be great. Say it with sincerity, believe in it, but you had to pivot. You had to pivot from, oh my gosh, is she going to die or what's going on? Right. And so another emotional pivot that really stood in my mind was that. And then from a business perspective, and it's more of a pivot on when you think you want something for your business and you realize it's not profitable or it's not making you happy, learning how to quit something, emotionally without feeling like you're failing is probably one of the most difficult pivots I've ever had to make in my life. And I made the pivot to close a business once, and it was because the people were around me and it wasn't what I really wanted. And it was probably the hardest thing I had to do in my entire life was to quit something, because I don't quit. I'm just a grinder, man. I'll grind forever. I'll do it forever. I'll keep going, and then I'll let the universe tell me which way to go. But I actually had to quit. I had to shut it down. And I think that was probably one of the things that I had to emotionally get control of and pivot to, like, you're not a failure. You didn't quit. You realigned yourself with something that feels better, and you kind of moved from there. So those are my.
I love that. That's discernment. I love that. I can't remember which CEO said it, but there's a CEO who famously would ask his team, "What did you say no to today?" Because we want to do everything and do it all. But then my energy is spread so thin. As an entrepreneur, I think knowing when to cut your losses, when to learn, take that lesson and pivot. That's a great story. Thank you for sharing that, Jon.
Yeah, man. Well, hey, I'm glad that you were on the show today, Ramsey. It was so awesome to chat with you. We'll have to do it again sometime. I'd like to do it in person, though. I have a couple ideas for us to do it. But anybody that's interested in Ramsey Bergeron, right? Ramsey Bergeron.com, Bergeron.com. Check it out below. And
BergeronWellbeing.com.
BergeronWellbeing.com. Thanks, Ramsey.
Or RamseyBergeron.com does direct to that site, so it's all good.
Awesome. But thank you for sharing today. I'm sure a lot of people got a lot of value out of this. I know I did. I want to thank all the listeners here at the Heartbeat of Money. I'm Jon P. Moffitt, and we will see you next time.